After hearing someone detail a certain despicable event, a man said, "I know that such things occur, but I don't see what's to be gained in talking about them." To which the original speaker rejoined, "Well, hell, there's nothing to be gained in talking about anything. What the hell are you looking for in life anyway? Enlightenment or something? Go on, just get the hell away from me." And thus concluded this particular conversation with himself. Later, that same afternoon, he did hum this ditty to himself. "I used to be two, then I was many, but now I've progressed and my dick's in a crack." No question about it. Evolution can take some strange and unexpected turns, especially when it doesn't really exist and is going nowhere. And of course, it really helps take the edge off to hear such delightful observations as, "Well, hell, what's to be gained by talking about anything?" Pardon me, but I've laughed so much I cried. Well, I guess those are tears. What do you think? A boy asked his father, "Can the mind ever tell a man what he truly is?" "Not likely," he replied, "in that it is the very thing he is not, yet the one continually claiming to be." "I see," said the son. "My kingdom," later cried the kid at play, "my kingdom ate a horse." All problems collapse when thought is withdrawn. And note, death is not a problem, but a certainty. And illness, but death by degrees. One man said he'd begun to think of his struggle for enlightenment as being on the lookout for Shorty. And a friend asked, "Did you say being on the lookout for a shortcut?" And the first man replied, "No, I don't think so." And the other man said, "Oh." At those odd moments when he could seem to escape the hold he somehow had on himself, somehow, one man would often mentally graze on this patch, quoting, "The I in me is really non-existent, truly nothing, but a nothing with the ability to think and speak, and a nothing that thinks and says that it is me. Is there anything in me to contradict and correct this? Yes, there seems to be. But what can it be other than just more illusions and nothingness? Shadows combating shadows, reflections attempting to alter the shape of other reflections. What a farce! What a whimsical predicament! I feel like Gulliver in Wonderland, Alice among the Lilliputians, me amidst the ordinary." And quote, "Indeed, as this fellow periodically glimpsed, when you're being held captive by the non-existent, the struggle for freedom presents a distinctly curious challenge. What is indeed, in fact, all that is necessary is a full realization of the situation so that you do not unknowingly contribute to your own continuing confinement by the expenditure of energy and totally meaningless activity." The phrase, "it's hard but it's fair," refers to being dumb and not knowing it. There was once a mystic whose method was based on a single idea he expressed: never waste any time, not even a second. And all who came to study with him stayed continually busy, running here and there, undertaking this and that, always doing, 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 when what he actually meant was that you shouldn't waste any time on thinking. Headline: special advice to those special explorers. To find the source of the river is to be free of its dangers. Every morning, until he stopped or forgot, One man would get his cat to sit on the edge of the bathroom sink, and they would both look down at the reflections in the water therein, and the man would chant aloud, "I am not what I think. I am not even what I think I am. And I am definitely not at all what I think about me." And upon hearing these concluding words to his master's mantra, the feline would agreeably nod, and they would both then be on about the day's business. Everybody has this thing that they're not quite sure what to do with. Most make do. A few get all caught up in the original uncertainty. Headline: A treatise regarding the pertinence between enlightenment and the mind. Of what use is tartar-controlled toothpaste to a man with false teeth? One uncle so said to a nephew, "Here's how you should think about the past, present, and future." You shouldn't think about the past, present, and future, but just spontaneously and non-mentally react to things as they occur. And so concludes another episode of your favorite soap opera. Easy to say, tricky to do. To a mystic, a man addressed this question: "Can you describe simply what is enlightenment?" And he replied, "Enlightenment is freedom from being mistaken." And the man inquired further, "You mean that through enlightenment, a man gaining such knowledge that he is never again mistaken in his thinking?" "No," replied the mystic, "knowledge and thinking doesn't enter into it. Listen clearly to what I said. Enlightenment is freedom from being mistaken. That's it. That's all of it. And adding to it merely clouds and confuses the matter. You see, as you've just proven, minds can never leave anything alone, for if they could, they would be enlightened." Headline: Special tip to those with a special interest in conditions. Once you can walk through a hen house without being affected by the smell, what need is there after that to try and change the way chickens are bred? As he petted various areas about his body, a man said, "This is obviously me, but what is the me that is saying it is?" One would-be traveler mused, "Even if thinking and talking have no profitable basis, perhaps if I keep thinking and talking about where I am now, I'll get so sick of it that I'll finally leave." As the fly on the GUI paper said, when you're stuck for an immediate solution, hell, anything's worth a shot. How great should be our gratitude to our insect friends for the many deep insights they so freely share with us. But some, obviously less than adequately appreciative, guy retorts, "Hell, if the damn fly's right and anything is worth a shot, then explain my fully reprehensible position when I am half shot." Well, sir, perhaps if you just keep thinking and talking about it. If there was anything excellent in our human life that would make everyone happy, then there wouldn't even be the illusionary possibility of becoming more conscious and more human. More of how real life, though undescribable, is using describable examples. Question: Who understands less than those who follow religion? Those who explain religion. I go ahead and give you the answer based on my assumption that you now realize that all examples are vacuous pseudonyms for the mind. Attention, please. Everyone has swallowed something that causes them to believe that they can find answers and solutions to their problems. But, still, if I may have your attention, please. But, what is not realized is that the very thing that they have swallowed is the sole source of their perceived problems. "Gad," said one guy, "ain't it great, in a perverse way, to be human?" One man's birthday song. "It's swell to be well and mighty fine to be out of your mind. But what I now want to make my life complete is to spit up the thing I've swallowed that sunk down to my feet." And just then his mother scolded him down off the couch, reminding him that he was no longer a young hare and should be avoiding cat balls to begin with. Headline, a reminder to do your part. Remember, the secondary world is real only as long as you make it so. Thank you for your cooperation. So-called conventional wisdom is an illusion. It doesn't exist. Oh, conventional exists, but not wisdom. One man, for the moment, decided, if I'm going to have me's, then I'm going to look at it as me having two particular me's: the talking me and the silent me. He then paused for a moment, brushed his hands together in satisfaction, and said, "And that takes care of that." A man asked a mystic, "Can you tell me what I am?" "No," he replied. "Well," said the man, "if I were a student of yours, could you tell me what I am?" "No," he again replied. Then asked the man, "If I were a student of yours, could you tell me what I'm not?" "That I could do," he replied, "but a true student of enlightenment could do that for himself." Question: why is man the only creature said unable to see himself as he is? Because he is the only one able to see himself in a mental sense? One man finally asked himself, when I don't think that I'm here to be in charge, who is in charge? And so concludes another episode of your favorite game show, Don't Answer That. The so-called education of man is a paving over of an imaginary carpet with illusionary cement. Looking over the equipment, a man thought, is it possible to have something and not know how to properly use it? Not in this lifetime, replied the equipment. And just to prove its point, forced the man to properly use it even though he was never aware he was doing so. If this does not immediately make sense to you, try taking some self-produced drugs, lay down for a while, and see what develops. From our loose leaf dictionary, yet another take on the word enlightenment. Enlightenment. The thing that can point to everything, but nothing can point to it. Which reminds you to wonder what need has a hand or location for a description of a finger. Mirror, mirror on my wall, what holds you up? Why don't you fall? No one's ever asked me, but if you want to know, reflections of reflections have nowhere to go. A young man in search of himself seems a pleasant sight. An old man, a pathetic one. If timing's not everything, there is no everything. A father poked his finger in a son's chest and so informed him. There are two reasons that you can't see things as they are. First is because you can't do otherwise, And second is, there is no you there inside of you to do so. Just to help clarify the matter and get it perfectly straight in his mind, one man noted to himself, if I didn't think that some things are annoying, how would I ever get annoyed? The speaker addressed the spectators. The struggle to achieve enlightenment is like a fish who believes there is a certain knowledge that will make living outside of water possible. And after a hefty silence, someone in the crowd called out, "Didn't you get what you were trying to say partially garbled?" "My good man," replied the speaker, "garbling is not my area of expertise. I spoke what I spoke. Now, any more questions?" As portrayed in a particular myth, there is a planet in another galaxy on which there is a certain location which, the harder you try to reach, the more difficult it is to do so. Go figure. And you don't have to go to another galaxy to do so. Do note once more that the mind is capable of things other than thought. And today's safety tip: you cannot burn up fire with fire. Unless you're an idiot. I mean normal. Looking at his figure in the mirror with a certain agitation of realization, a man thought, "No wonder it's been so difficult for me to awaken. There is no me to awaken." And silently to itself, his reflection muttered, "I could have told you that." "Okay," says one man, "if what someone else understands can actually do you any good, then I think this should be reflected in our laws. For instance, if you're stopped while driving drunk in someone else's car, it should be the owner of the vehicle who's charged with the offense. No?" He adds that if this isn't making any sense to you, you should have a drink. The following is one man's question of the moment. "Well, now that I have it, what do I do with it?" One man says he's presently adopted this attitude: don't think about thought. Whatever you do, don't think about thought, or you'll be stuck for eternity. And another man suddenly mused, without the original thought of me, there'd be no sensation of multiple me's. When one man heard one kid ask another kid, "Where does the light go when the light goes out?" he suddenly wondered, "Where do my thoughts go when I show up?" Headline: an essay concerning the relationship between awakening and the mind. One man sunbathes on overcast days when the temperature is cooler. One mother's advice to a daughter: if you're not continually doing the opposite of what you are inclined to do, you're not doing anything worth your while. After many years involved in it, a man thought, "I do not know whether my struggle to awaken has been good or bad, but I know it was inevitable." Contrary to the way it's normally put, that men have thoughts, it would be just as accurate to say thoughts have men. And insofar as useful potential is concerned, accurate could be an understatement. One mystic so said, "Only the blind can see, only those with no personal views." Trees, mountains, rivers, clouds, and crows are continually revealing to man the subtle reality of the truth. They are saying, "We are what we are, and we do not know what we are." and we do not say what we are, and we do not imagine that we are other than we are. This is the great but subtle and silent message they send to man. Headline, El Curio, time once again. With enlightenment, there is nothing to hold on to. Going along with conditions makes one ordinary. Going against them makes one free. Now for some social advice for the few. Being unenlightened is like being unpopular with yourself. Sign in a semi-supermarket. Intense, absolute feelings of an individual I are intense, absolute individual illusions. And shoplifters will be persecuted. Even after some enlightenment, a man's mind remains partially clear and partially dark. There is always more to be done, more to be seen. As men have long suspected, there is a single source from which everything comes, but not, as they commonly propose, is this source outside themselves. Headline, as concerns sects and the various mystical schools. Those who know are those who know, regardless of what you call them. But if they let you call them anything, they don't know. After some time actively engaged in a certain pursuit, one man now says, I don't believe that what we're dealing with here is thought, mind, or consciousness. I think what we're dealing with is a thing, something totally unknown to us, so as of yet not correctly identified or named. One thing in particular that awakening reveals is that there is no outside of you. Headline, forget it. There is no explanation of reality. To be awake is to be in the light with no shadow falling. A man who can be found is not free. Headline, special info for those on a special investigation of that certain cellar. The quickest way to understand darkness is to turn the flashlight back on itself. Legend tells of a certain mystic who, on his deathbed, said that the only reason he had so persistently written and spoken publicly was to keep himself from reading and listening to the words of others. Headline, pop quiz pertinent to the few. Why is some advertising so irritating? Because all attempts to sell an enlightened man something are. Of course, there's something even more disgusting, and that's an awakened man buying something someone wants to sell him. As he was about to toss out one of the wrinkled road maps out of the car window, he noticed for the first time a message in small print at the bottom which said, after some enlightenment, you may feel liberated, but not yet actually be. After reading this and pondering its significance, he was momentarily unsure as to whether to go ahead and throw the map away, or maybe fold it back up and slide it under the seat, just in case. Meanwhile, according to ancient legend, there was once a group of seekers of freedom whose operational maxim was, there is no such thing as just in case. And even if there is, we want no part of it. You ever think how rarely we seem to find any contemporaneous men who are equal to those of yore? Is this a reflection on the decline of man, or could it be an unrecognized comment on our inability to make such judgments in real time and animate circumstances? Things seen from a distance are always more agreeable to personal interpretation and imagination. Headline special guide to those special travelers. If there's a final step on your path, you're on the wrong path. All enlightenment perishes and must be replaced with fresh enlightenment. An endeavor with no end means a life without limits. Headline, special data for those special authors. Until you cannot separate the sheets of paper on which you compose, you have not found your proper writing material. And finally, a boy asked a cop on the corner, "Is a well-turned metaphor just as good as the plain truth itself?" And the gendarme replied with a chuckle, "Har, har, little lad. Why, a metaphor is just as good as any damn thing you can put a word to. Don't you get it? That's the whole point of the thing." "Oh," replied the kid, "you mean regarding people who know what's going on." "Har, har, little nipper. That's precisely what I mean." And with another combined and hearty har, har, they concluded their conversation, and the corner looked on with a smile. And a boy asked the cop, "Is a well-turned metaphor just as good as the plain truth itself?" And he replied, "Well, a metaphor is just as good as any damn thing you can put a word to." Don't you get it? That's the whole point of the thing. What is the whole point of talk? And don't rush, don't immediately say that can't be true. You hadn't even heard me yet. Well, in fact, now you pissed me off. I just gonna do one, but I think now I'm gonna do two. Two possibilities. And if you tell me that neither possibility is possible, I'll be humiliated on your behalf, since you obviously will not have the intelligence to do so in a timely manner. What if talk, give you two possibilities at least. What if talk is for the purpose of covering up the fact that men know that there is nothing to know? For those of you that were here last night, I bet you were lonesome since we didn't meet last night. But it gave you an opportunity to ponder what I would have said had I been here. That if you recall, I was going to speak last night on such matters of things that are by now in the collective thinking of man, the collective mind of man, are truisms to the absolute strongest degree. Truisms to such a point that I don't know what else to call them, conventional wisdom, but the primary modifying description that I mean by, when I'm saying truism, that it is now accepted as such fact that not only do people pay no notice, it's far beyond a cliche. You know, truism is like a cliche that seems to have some substance, whereas cliches just seem to be shorthand or hip phrases. But a truism the mind with ordinary people takes it to be almost as valid and as necessary as such things as breathing. That if a discussion is going on about something, and the kind of truism that I was going to use as an example that I did, such as men cannot see themselves as they are. That all ordinary, civilized, intelligent people on this planet have always, for thousands of years and right up to today, accept that. No one thinks about it. No one ever analyzes it. It is taken, I assume you get the point, as I was already trying to make. Truism doesn't even cover it. It is a part of thinking. It is a part of thinking man's reality, that men cannot see themselves as they are, and I pointed out to you that on the face of that, that's ridiculous. If you look at it, there is no way to prove that. There's no evidence of that. The only evidence of it is people's personal opinion, is to tell someone else that they do not know what they look like, that they have no correct knowledge of themselves, or they would not dress so stupidly, so out of fashion. They would not act so unbecoming. But all of this is based upon the observer's comment on his perception of saying, well, men do not know what they look like, or that person would not act so pretentious, claiming to be knowledgeable in a certain area when he is not. That's the observer's opinion. That has nothing to do with the man speaking. There is no way to ever prove that he does not know perfectly well that he is a pretentious ass, or a man who dresses out of fashion. For someone to say, well, there's obvious proof, there's physical proof, because here he is out in public trying to pick up women, if he's a man, trying to be cool, trying to be hip, trying to be suave and debonair, and look how he's dressed. Double knit. Uh-oh. Let me change that. Damn. At any rate, somebody could say, well, it just shows the validity of the statement that men cannot see themselves as they are, because look at him. He is trying to be cool, trying to be hip, and look how he's dressed. Now that may fit contemporary thinking. It may certainly fit contemporary fashion. But that is not proof. No one ever thinks about it. That is not proof whatsoever that the man does not know how he's dressed. Of course, then you go back to the person that made the observation, and if you point that out to them, they'd go, well, I can't prove it, but look, the man, if he knew how he looked, if he knew we were laughing at him, he wouldn't dress that way. You call that proof? You can't prove that he doesn't know that you're laughing at him. You're not trying to hide it, but there's no way to prove it. Does he not come in here week after week, every weekend? Yeah, he does. That damn same cheap toupee, always some kind of polyester thing. You know, keeps adding, the fewer women he picks up, the more he strikes out, the more gold chains he wears. And I said, okay, so he's in here every week. And you're going to tell me that you take that as proof that he does not know that he cannot see himself. And your proof was, after I said you can't prove that, then your additional support of your argument was, well, if he could see himself as he is, he would know what sport we're making of him, and he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't show up here. That was the proof of your proof. And the people go, yeah. You see where this is going. Like everything in the secondary world, it's going nowhere. Or round and round, if you consider round and round going somewhere. You cannot prove that. They cannot prove. I could say, go over there and ask him. Because you see how life is by now? Even if the man did not know, if he was such a dunderhead, if he was so clouded, so unaware that he didn't know it, if they walked over there, if I could talk them into it, and then when they said, you know, by the way, you know, we see you come in here, and they introduce themselves, you know, maybe I'll make a bet. Go talk to him. So they go over there. They go, hi, my name's Fred. We see you coming here all the time. Yeah. Well, me and that other guy over there in the white polyester double knit coat thing, me and him was talking, and he said, and they bring him up to date of what I've said. And they say to him, the guy with the cheap toupee and the unfashionable, I might point out, polyester double knit, not at all like, anyway, in his obviously unfashionable. So they go over and they say, Well, he put us up to this. He says that there's no way that we could prove that you're not hip to the fact that we've been laughing at you all these months you come in. And he says we can't prove it, so at least I'm going to find out that we were correct, that you do know it. You do understand that there's a 99% certainty he's going to go, well, yeah, I know it and I don't like it, even if he'd never thought about it. Because now that he finds out they've been laughing at him, he's not going to give them ammunition to laugh at him twice as much. Because if he said, well, no, I never thought about it, assuming he's got just walking around intelligence, then they're going to fall on the floor. You know, for them to say, we've been laughing at you for a year now. We got nothing else to do. We point at you and laugh. We take bets about what kind of outrageous, outdated stuff you're going to wear, and he says there's no way that you may not even that you could be aware of it, and we say that you couldn't be. So, are you aware that we've been laughing at you all this time or not? You do understand. This is not proving anything. But even if I was not, even he didn't know, he now knows, and he would say he knows, and he would say he always knew, and so they still couldn't prove it. You understand? Or are you getting to the point to understand that you can't prove anything? If you think you can prove anything, you're still very much in the dark. You can't prove anything. There's nothing to be proven. It's not a philosophical speculation. It's not some kind of spiritual or theological conundrum. You can't prove anything. That's one of the things that attracts certain minds to so-called science, because they appear to be on the track. That is, they can make up stuff, such as mathematics, and say, all right, we can prove this, 2 and 2 is 4. And you go, well, all right, that's one thing you can depend on. I know I've tried this before. I don't know whether this is real easy to see or hard to see. That's bullshit, too. But it has the appearance that there's at least something certain, and we'll build on it. We know that 2 and 2 is 4. And so building from that one certainty, and they picture, and it has happened, if you look at the secondary reality, as I've called it, as being like a floating hologram that everybody contributed to. It's become a very intricate, Baroque, Rococo. It just gets more and more, and they say, but at least we're on the right foundation. People who are wired up to be interested in science would say, not at all like, for instance, religion. That at least we've started off on a firm foundation of a few things that we literally know, such as 2 and 2 is 4. And nobody notices you made that up. No, no, no. We can prove that. We'll go with that guy with the polyester suit and prove it to him. See what he says. At any rate, where we were was I was picking out examples of things that no one ever thinks about. They are just ingrained. They seem to be a part of the human reality, such as 2 and 2 is 4, if you like that, or something of a more human apparent nature, that men are unable, men are not capable of seeing themselves as they are. Everyone accepts that. Everyone. The more intelligent you are by ordinary standards, the more you would insist that's true. Where I started after reading the news was, would anybody even consider the fact that talk has possibilities, possible purposes that no one ever considers? Rather than talk, let's see if I can come up with a kind of a on-the-spot truism. Ordinary intelligent people on this planet, if you gave them this definition of human speech, that the purpose of speech is to investigate, or the purpose of speech is to clarify, to demonstrate and clarify our discoveries of reality. Something along those lines. That the point of speech is to enlighten, not necessarily in a mystical sense, but the whole point of speech would seem to be, besides any minor social chit-chat, that would not the mind, your mind and everyone else, something along those lines. I could probably improve it, or maybe you can on the spot, but if you said that the purpose of speech, the basic purpose of speech, demonstratively, if you look at it and you ponder it for a few minutes, then the purpose of speech, other than the chit-chat and the social aspects, that the purpose of speech has got to be the ability to communicate and to pass from person to person and to demonstrate publicly man's discovery of reality. In other words, if a scientist discovers a new vaccine that might help, or a scientist discovers what he says is a new theory to help explain the movements of the universe or the lack thereof, whatever it is, if he could not speak, then he in no way could communicate it. So when people make discoveries, or when people simply have theories, or when philosophers, psychologists, ordinary people have a certain insight into life or a new idea, like, wait, here's why people do so-and-so, or did you ever think about so-and-so? Even if you could see something like that, if you could not communicate it, if you could not make it publicly aware, and of course writing is just the same thing as speech. So we could say, and I think that would about cover it somewhere in there, that that has got to be the highest purpose of speech. Or that has got to be speech operating at its maximum beauty, fulfilling its purpose, its potential to the maximum would be for it to be a revealing process, a process to communicate your understanding, yours generically. For man's understanding, their discovery is to be able to express it, to reveal it, to share it. All right. I'm saying, can you see? Not a theory. You either see it or you don't. That is not provable, and it is just as provable, it is just as demonstrative, if you see it, that speech is made to cloud, not reveal. It is made to darken, to hide, not to reveal. And its purpose is not to communicate knowledge. It is to hide the fact that you have no knowledge. And as long as you're talking, as long as you can say, well, wait a minute, I have this new idea. You can walk up to a conversation being held and you listen, you go, huh, you know, I've been thinking, and you go, blah, 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 and you never thought about it. You don't know anything about it. Of course, they don't either. Whatever they're talking about is a made-up thing. They're discussing politics. They're discovering what is going to happen to the Baltic region if, indeed, those erstwhile city-states continue to disintegrate at the rate at which they are now. And are we simply going to replay Mediterranean European history from 2,000 years ago? Well, you know, I've been thinking about that. My grandfather was Greek. You just walked up, you never thought about it, your grandfather's not Greek, but you say that, and people go, oh, like, well, he's got something to add. Add the what? Well, the serious conversation. I mean, this is going to, well, it already is affecting the geopolitical balance of Europe. And it could, by God, very shortly influence you right here in the good old U.S. of Norway. Well, if you're ordinary and you think it does, but you understand what I'm trying to say, that it is as distinct a possibility, or if you're getting this good, it is as distinctly true as the opposite. That is, that speech would be seen operating at its maximum, at its most efficient, at its beautiful efficiency, that its real purpose has got to be. I didn't go into it in detail, but I assume you grasp it, that you could go through all of the progress of man's civilization would not have been possible without speech. And so you can look at speech as being an absolute inescapable, an absolute, it was de rigueur. For man to progress at all, he had to speak. If in some way, you can't really imagine it, but if you could think and still not speak, nothing would have happened. Man would be no better off than any other primate. So you can say that speech, the whole thing is to reveal yourself, to reveal your discoveries, but it's also to reveal, as it's normally put, the human experience, not just scientific or medical so-called discoveries, but it's for the arts, religion, sociology, all the social sciences, all the arts, that if man could not speak, one man could not write a novel. We would have had no Shakespeare's and Balzac's and etc. And people could not write plays to help uncover the human soul. So you can say that speech is the great uncoverer. It is the great process of revelation. that a man can be troubled. We all know that speech, they say if you have conflicts with loved ones or with another person, talk it out. That is one of the great release of pressure. That is one of the great, always readily methods of remedial effort on oneself. If you're troubled, depressed, angry, speak, reveal your soul. Turn to your loved one, whoever it is, and say, listen, I've got to tell you, I feel as though you've hurt me. I've been holding this grudge, and it's poisoning our relationship. And people talk, oh, blah, 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 blah. Instead of it being the great process of communication, and let me stick to revelation tonight, that it is a means to reveal everything from one's personal feelings, to reveal them to others. How does somebody else know? They may know that you've been acting sort of funny for the last few years, that you've been sort of cold, but they don't know why. And maybe they even say, is everything all right? And you go, hmm. And then finally you say, all right, listen, I'm going to have to tell you. And then you tell them, and they go, well, my God, I wish you had told me that. I didn't know that I offended you that way, or I'll do anything to make it up to you. And you go, well, and it seems as though if they had just talked 2 years ago, all of this, because it was cured in a matter of seconds. So speech could be seen as being the great process of revelation, all the way from the personal human experience such as that, all the way to things that apparently have a much more universal significance or possibility of a man discovering what he says, some cosmologist, some astronomer discovering some, what he says, new movements in a faraway galaxy, or what he perceives to be a new theory of the universe that, if it be true, will affect your life. That kind of thing. All right, so if it's all the process, it seems to be that speech of revealing, if that is true, then it is also just as true that you can see it as being a process of secreting, of covering up. It's not in any way meant to reveal. It is not meant to disclose. It is meant to hide. And it's primarily meant to hide the fact that everything that men talk about is imaginary, that no one knows anything. And the more you say you do, it makes no difference. It's like what I point out in the news item, that all thought is flawed, and the more you try to correct it, the more flawed it gets, which is not true, but it made an interesting news item, I thought. It doesn't get more flawed, but the more you try to correct it, in a sense, the more flawed you get. Because you continue your expending even additional energies in the defense of a fraud. So, yes, I know I'm right. My God, don't tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. I do know what I'm talking about. And somebody says, yeah, that's silly. Well, it's not silly. Hey, give it up. Just forget it. I'm sorry I mentioned it. No, I'm glad you mentioned it because it's not silly, damn it. And let's say it was silly, which is a safe statement. But you know how that goes. If somebody points it out to you, you're very inclined. It's not uncommon that you dig in your toenails. You go, it's not silly. Like, oh, come on, it is silly. You know it. Well, it's not. As I said, the silliness, whatever the idea was, it doesn't get any flaweder. I mean, flawed's flawed. But you, in a sense, get flaweder. What if thought, since it's almost the same thing, let's put it that way. What if thought is not for the purpose of any revelation, but the contrary? Of course, I know anybody can think, immediately thinks, boy, that's crazy. And right there is proof of it, because your thought heard that and went, well, that's not true, and your thought saw through it. Your thought was able to immediately, just like, well, you know, just like that. I mean, the sharp whiz banger you are, that as soon as I said thought could be for the purpose of obfuscation stuff. And as soon as I said that, your thought, because I knew I was dealing with not a bunch of clodhoppers, but your thought immediately went, that can't be. And if I'd said, I saw that look, you think I couldn't be correct. And your thought, assuming it was still that sharp, would go, well, it's obviously not correct now that you mention it. And the proof is that my thought was able to hear your thought and immediately destroy it. Immediately realize it's foolishness. All right, so assuming you followed all that, what was the outcome of that? Now, an ordinary person would say, well, it showed that the other guy showed that what you said was silly. That sounds familiar, but anyway. It shows that, if I said, well, what was the outcome of that little scenario, that little short scene that I just made up? They would say, well, you know, if I said, is there an outcome? Did it amount to anything? They would say, well, yeah, if that's all you're going to say, then that little scene, there was an outcome that you point out, or you posited the possibility that thought is made to cloud, to hide, not to reveal. And you said that that is possible. And you said that to that other guy. I'm a third party now discussing what I said and this other person, the second person. And the third person will say, well, you asked if there was any outcome, if that amounted to anything. He pointed out that you were wrong. He said it couldn't be. And then you said something like, well, you know, you can't prove it. The one is just as likely as the other. And this third guy is still talking, and he says to me, he says, well, that other guy, then after you said that to him, he said, He said, you're wrong, and I know it right this second, because my thoughts, as soon as you said that it can't be proven, my thoughts immediately recognized, just immediately. It's just self-evident. My thoughts, and I'm a sane person, I have a nice IQ, I've got a good education, I listen to what you said. This is still the other guy, and he says, but my thoughts immediately saw how ludicrous, how faulty was your idea, and rejected it. Just rejected it. I mean, there's nothing to discuss. There is the proof, said the second guy. There is the proof that thought is for the process of discovery, for revealing the truth. Now, that's this third guy when I said, did that little scene amount to anything? So to him, we had some sort of little byplay, like a little debate, and this guy won. Of course, that's not the point of which one was won, but you understand he says there was an outcome because from an outside view, he said the thing that you two are talking about, at the end, he had the final word. There was an outcome to that one little scene, as limited as it was. If we take it just from the context of what I gave, this is still the third guy talking, he says then that guy wrapped it up, and there was a point to it because he pointed out that his thought, that you had to be wrong because his thought took your idea that thought might be for the point of covering, of clouding, of hiding, not revealing. And he listened just a second, and he said, no. He said, and the proof is that my thoughts listened to that idea that were contrary to them and revealed the truth about it. You understand? That from that outside view, and I'm saying that would be a valid outside, that'd be a valid ordinary view, then he's correct that that little byplay had some ending, that it produced some product. That is, that he had a final conclusive say that this guy agreed with. Humanity would agree with. That yes, he's correct. You know, I see that. As though something happened. You may not believe where I'm going with this. Maybe you're expecting, there's a punchline to the punchline. Here it is. Nothing happened. Still take what I said, and I'm taking their position. I'm saying that from an outside view, the second party would have been correct. He would go, nah, thought cannot be for the point of obscuring. It has to be for the point of revealing and discovery. Now, so you can't prove that. It could just as likely be otherwise. There's no way to prove it. And the other guy went, nah. He said, you're wrong, and I know it. And you should know it, he could have said to me. Because I listened to what you just said, and my thoughts immediately reject that. And he could have turned around to humanity in general, the other 6 billion people on this planet, if they'd been staying there. And he said, because my thoughts, I listened to what you said. But as soon as you said it, my thoughts went, no, that's not true. And there's the proof of it. My thoughts went for the truth and uncovered it. And he would look around to the other 6 billion people behind him, and they'd all go. And I'm not saying they're wrong. What I'm saying is nothing happened. There was no point to any of that. That's how you keep it going, is to go, well, at least we settled that. At least 2 and 2 is 4, now let's go on to something else. Wait a minute, you dickhead. There's no, 2 and 2 is not 4. You might as well say, meow, 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 good, or yuck and yuck is, Oh, well, you're just being silly. You know, mathematics is not silly, but you're just going, nuck and nuck is, yeah. And of course, then the 6 billion, as they should, can dismiss all this, which is not the point. The point is, you're supposed to learn that you should be dismissing all of this. Not all of this, but all of this. Well, I don't know. I'll think about it, dickhead. Well, no, wait a minute. No, I'm trying to see what you're getting at. I'm not getting at anything. Same as you're thinking. Yeah, but 2 and 2 is 4, and if maybe I can finally see that 4 and 4 is 8. I'm sure you can. And let me make a prediction. If you get that far, let's see, what's your sign? All right, let me predict this. I'll bet you that eventually you'll see that, let me see how to say this. I bet you'll see that 8 and 8, 16. And minds will go, that's spooky. I never believed in that kind of mind reading, but I've been thinking about that. That's what they'd say themselves. Fade out while I look off. I'm going to attempt to look off in a kind of a pensive, a reflective, kind of fade it out. Maybe play a little something Wagnerish, kind of slow.